Good morning, beautiful people of YouTube. This is your buddy Choppadong once again with another NHL slate breakdown. I represent the DFS Army. You can follow me on Twitter at Choppadong, and you can join our VIP program, dfsarmy.com, link in the description as always, and become one of our newest Army grinders that has been winning at a record clip on the DFS sites, FanDuel and Draftkings. To be quite honest with you, we had a guy, he's a writer for our website. His name is Alvarez and has jumped in, become a great personality and a neat little coach and leader. He writes our free squares column for the NBA, and he popped himself a little 10K grand prize this weekend on the PGA tournament side of things. So we're dual threats, man. We don't just play one sport. We teach you how to play them all. So if that interests you, you need to follow that link in the description. Jump on board, become an Army member. Baseball's getting ready. Football will be getting ready here in a few months. We're already thinking about that inside the Army. So let's rock and roll with the hockey slate and bust up this baby. We got 6 games, and maybe there's a couple of tips in there that'll pop into my head as I've been researching and looking at this thing. If we look first at Florida and the Buffalo Sabres, this is actually a game I like. Florida's won their last 2 in a row. And if you look at Reiner, he's 4-2 in his last 6. Lehner's more of a GPP type of goalie. This one is kind of going to go both ways. Should be a high-activity game, up and down the ice, back and forth. Both teams shoot a ton. Florida shoots the most in the league right now. Buffalo shoots third most in the league right now. Both teams give up shots on goal. Both are top 10, with Buffalo being the second most, I guess, shootable team, if you'll call it that. They give up the second most shots across the league. In terms of fantasy points scored, Buffalo's a little bit better. They're a top 10 team. Fantasy points scored, those young kids are tearing it up. And Florida is kind of middle of the pack, but they're in a good spot, being that Buffalo gives up a lot of points as well. So should be a neat little game to watch. I would grab pieces of both sides of it. I wouldn't overexpose to any particular side. But if you wanted to jump in, Barkov's been playing pretty well. Trocheck's is usually pretty solid. Marshall Schultz here's been on a hot streak lately. Your defensemen are what they are. Look for somebody like a Yandel that quarterbacks power play. Over here on the Buffalo side, Okposo's back after a rib injury. Had a nice game, first game out of the chute. He's rosterable. O'Reilly's up there with him. Eichel, of course. Evander Kane is another one. These are all guys, and your defenseman McCabe's about as steady as it gets for a value defenseman. If you look over into the Nashville and New York Islanders side, I'm more focused on the Nashville side of things. Only because they score a little bit more fantasy points, and the New York Islanders have been giving up a ton. They're a top 5 team in points allowed, so that puts Nashville in a good spot. You can't go wrong rostering these guys over on the New York side, but I'm more focused on the Nashville side. Arvidsson is consistent as they get. Forsberg's been a little down lately, more than up. John Krok's another one that's not bad, but I like the defenseman and Josie and Ellis a lot tonight. So seems that those guys are always on the action when Nashville's scoring points, and lately Nashville's been scoring a lot of points. In the respect of the goalie and what New York is getting in return, Pekka Rinne's won 5 in a row. In his last 4, he's allowed 2 or less goals. So he's been playing very, very well lately, and actually pretty consistent for a Pekka Rinne. I'm off of the Detroit and Carolina game. Not really much to say there. Usually you'll hear me talk about Zetterberg, Nyquist, Nielsen types. But, not on them tonight. Better spots for other players, other teams. Chicago and Tampa Bay, this one's interesting. You'll see me write up today that I like Chicago, I like Nashville, I like, I'm going to like Calgary, I like Buffalo, Florida, a little bit of St. Louis. Those are the teams I'm kind of focused on. I don't mention Tampa Bay, but before I get too off the beaten path here, you definitely need to always look at Kucherov, and you need to look at Victor Hedman down here on the defensive side of things. These two are just it seems like everything that Tampa Bay does goes through those guys. They're expensive. Kucherov's getting ready to hit 8K on Draftkings, which is fine. He's been averaging about 7 points his last few games. He's got upside at 14 or 15. Great if you can spend up to him, but I'll give you a little trick. One way you can get access to him and then still balance out the rest of your lineup with the other teams that are in better spots tonight is you take somebody like a Braden Point. At 5,500, you've got the top line, top power play line. He shares the ice with Kucherov, and generally speaking, can set him up or be set up by him. So that's cheap exposure to a guy who's really rolling lately, and Hedman's on the D1 and the power play 1 as well. So Point would be my cheap solution to access to both of these guys. Allow me another $2,000, $2,500 to roster elsewhere in other spots tonight, and that way I don't get too overexposed to this game and to those high-priced players in secondary spots and not primary spots. So that's my little tip to you. On the Chicago side, I'm not really on a lot of these guys for whatever reason. Seabrook's in a good spot. Duncan Keith's always pretty solid. But your Kane, Panarin, Panic, Taves, these types of guys, for whatever reason, they've cooled off a little bit. Therefore, once they've cooled off, they're a little bit overpriced. Not saying that Chicago can't just rip the shreds off of things, but tonight I just think there are other teams that provide a little bit better value up and down the board. So I'm a little bit more focused on those guys, but I won't fault you for it at all. Vasil has looked good lately over here in Tampa Bay's goal. That might be another reason for why I'm thinking that. But Chicago's a top 10 scoring team always, and they're right up there, ranked 6th right now in fantasy points scored. So can't go too wrong there. The Arizona and St. Louis Blues game, Arizona's lost 2 in a row. They're on the road. They don't play as well on the road. St. Louis ranks 29th in fantasy points allowed against. So St. Louis is a point suppression team. Most teams don't do too well against them, especially lately since Mike Yo's taken over. Jake Allen's been a stellar goalie, averaging about 6.5 points per game in his last 10. That gets you right at about 3/4 value for this 8,300 salary. That's great. They carry the minus 270 favorite. That's down off of a minus 280. That's not a very big line move. The 3.5 points, goals for projected is a little odd to me because St. Louis doesn't remind me of a goal-scoring team. This top line has not been playing very well. Jaden Schwartz has kicked it in. You want a GPP pick? He's a nice one. Your second line is not all that great either. Their energy comes from their fourth line here with Upshaw, Reeves, and Brodziak. These guys really get in there, throw their bodies around, and really knock it around. They don't have a lot of scoring upside. They don't even really shoot the puck. They're more of a body-checking line. But what they've done is these guys here on this third line have started to creep into the second line's minutes. And so your Feharvi and Barbashev are my focuses here because they have some power play time. They don't have to do much at these low 3K salaries. They're nice little punts to get you into more expensive players and more expensive mini stacks. I don't know that I'm stacking St. Louis up because I just don't depend on any of this production coming out of here. Petrangelo's not terrible. I hate saying that. It just boils my blood to have to recommend the guy, but he has been consistent since Shattenkirk left, quarterbacking the power play unit. Been pretty good. Guy usually he throws pucks at nets with the intention to get a deflection. So he picks up some cheap assists there. He isn't going to score you a lot of goals. I think he scored his 4th goal of the year 2 nights ago, and it was an empty net goal. So, that's what you get out of Pietrangelo. There's no upside with him at all, but there has been a nice floor for cash games. Colorado and Calgary, this is my game of the night here. I'm not really as high on it as I thought I would be. I am very high on Brian Elliott, whereas Jake Allen scored about 6.5 points per game on DraftKings. Brian Elliott scored about 7 or so, so he's just a smidge better over his last 10 games or so. We're drawing Colorado. Colorado is on the road. Colorado has lost 5 in a row. Picard has allowed 12 goals in his last 3 games. That's 4 per. If I should really go back, look at my lineup, and rethink getting more access to Calgary here and taking some shots with them, being that the goalie gives up a lot of goals. Brian Elliott's been stellar, 9-1 in his last 10, 2 shutouts, a couple of 1-goal games in there on top of it. And as a result, Calgary's offense has kicked it up a little bit. They have scored the 5th most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks, and Colorado has allowed the 3rd most. This is a horrible spot for Colorado, great spot for Calgary. If you're one of those wild-ass guys like we have in our GPP recommendation coach, Shady's Mix in the Army, man, he said he liked Colorado tonight. I said you can have them. I don't see it. But you know what? That's why it takes all kinds, and that's why our community is so great, because we have guys that will tell you what they think, and they're not afraid to get criticism. We're not afraid to debate who we like, why we like them. We're not afraid to call each other crazy. We just get in there, we have a good time. We talk hockey, we talk the other sports, and it's really developed into a great community. So once again, go to the link in the description there, the dfsarmy.com link, and investigate becoming, look at some of our free content. Today's a free content Monday, or it should be. A lot of that content will open up to you this afternoon. And, take a look around at what we have to offer. Spreadsheets, player picks, podcasts, videos like this, all sorts of stuff that help you become a better DFS player at all levels, no matter what you are. And then, of course, in Slack, the access to our real-time coaches, one-on-one or in group format. So let's jump in. That slate's basically broken down. These are some of the value plays that I picked. Of course, I would start with Elliott. I might run a Jake Allen. I don't mind some of the Calgary stuff. I like Payarvi better than Barbashev, but Barbashev scored a goal last time out for St. Louis. Those are my punt plays. McCabe is steady Eddie for Buffalo. Ryan Ellis has been great. Jossie's been great. Okposo, Arvidsson, Point with your cheap access to it. This is just a sample lineup. You can tweak it. You can use it. I don't really give a crap. I'll probably change it 7 or 8 times like good DFS players do throughout the day. So, but that's all you. It gives you a good look at what to do. You focus on a couple of these games. A lot of times I like to take teams and rule them out. Like I won't play this game here. If I will include this game, I'll take New York out. I try to get this thing down to who I really like. Let's take them out and really target some guys if I wanted to focus on them, and then I wanted to focus on Calgary. Now, the only thing that's being suggested to me are players from these teams. And now I can start really looking at game logs, jump into an O'Reilly, take a look, 3 points or so, 6K salary. It's a little about half, maybe a touch more than half. It's getting close to my 2/3 value number that I like to run as a ratio. If you need questions on that, ask me in the Army or DM me on Twitter. I go into the game log, I look, he's been fine. 3 out of his last 4 games have been great. Go back and see how consistent he's been. A little up and down, but recently he's been great. Definitely in play. That's really all the thinking that I'm doing when I put together lineups. I'm just trying to get into the games that are in the most favorable spots, guys that are looking to put pucks on net, guys that are that have been scoring goals lately, that have been kind of hot. And then I just run where I think the production has been coming from, and then close my eyes, schedule some head-to-heads, and hopefully kick some ass. So it doesn't take a lot. Hockey's a volatile sport. We're getting into baseball. Baseball's also a volatile sport. You're going to find guys that are in absolutely cupcake positions that just crap on you. That's just the nature of the game. It doesn't happen as much in football. It doesn't happen as much in basketball, but it still does happen. It just happens more in some of these other sports, and therefore the volatility is a little bit up and down. It's a little harder to nail the production that you're going to get. When it all comes together, you do fine. If you get good at doing it more often than not, focus on maybe joining some free leagues to practice your hockey. Get into a 1,000-person player tournament and practice getting into the top 500. You start doing that, then maybe you start throwing some bucks on the line. You take on some head-to-heads. You start getting into some 50-50s. Maybe take your shot at a tournament or two. It's all up to you. Again, this is Chapadong, DFS Army. Join us, talk about us. We can talk about this stuff all day long. The more you talk to us, the more nuggets drop out of our mouths, and the more everybody learns. And, of course, those guys in that forum help me as much as I help them. We're all learning and growing together. It's probably the greatest community on the web and the most bang for your buck. So, anyway, I'm out for today. That was a lot for a little, not even 15 minutes worth of time. So, hopefully you guys get in and get fired up for the 6-game slate tonight, and we will talk to you probably tomorrow.